from the Council of the Baltic Sea States, and we are the lead partner of Promise, which since 2015 has been promoting the spread of the Barnahus model throughout Europe. Before I welcome today's speaker, I will very shortly say what a Barnahus is and why we are here, and set the stage for today's webinar. In case you are new to our group, the Barnahus, sometimes known as a children's house, is not a place where children go to stay. Rather, it is a child-friendly office where children go to tell about their abuse to many different people in a coordinated way. And they do this in an environment designed just for them and in a process designed to prevent traumatization and re-traumatization. And this is a process which feeds into criminal and welfare procedures. So what this means is that law enforcement, criminal justice, child protection, mental health professionals are all cooperating under one roof to provide rapid access to justice and care for child victims and witnesses of violence. We are soon closing the second phase of Promise. The first phase launched a European level dialogue and published standard-setting publications. The second phase has been supporting countries to develop their own national dialogue, agreements, capacity, and more. This map on the screen right now is a little bit outdated. We need to add some more countries here, but you'll see how many countries are joining our movement here. And these webinars are for everyone who is interested, wherever they are, to take part in the Barnahus movement, European Barnahus movement. We're so glad that you could join us today. And if you have any questions about the Barnahus model more generally, please don't hesitate to ask in the chat. And of course, we especially encourage questions about the topic of today's webinar, considerations for the recording of interviews of children at the Barnahus. Before handing over to Emil, I want to brag shortly that we were actually connected through this webinar series. We had a short chat which led to a Skype meeting where we decided that we needed to share the details of our discussion to this wider audience. And this comes in two parts. First, we have this webinar now, and second, a fact sheet, which we are releasing in partnership later today. I also wanted to highlight that the recording of the interview forms such an integral part of the child-friendly processes that come together under one roof. And it's so important to get it right from the beginning to ensure that each child who is interviewed in the Barnahus has the best possible opportunity to have their voices heard and believed, and to have their testimony accepted as evidence in court, to avoid having to go to court themselves, and to be able to go back to their normal lives as soon as possible. You can read a lot more about the importance of the interview and the recording in the Barnahus quality standards. It comes in a long version, an ebook, and a short version which has many translations. You can see all our other publications at the link. And now I am pleased to introduce Emil Flam from Indico Systems. Emil, we connected this spring over two main things. One, that the Barnahus approach is the best practice approach for interviewing children as of today. And two, that the effective use of technology has enormous potential to change the world for the better. Emil, the floor is now yours.
Absolutely, Shauna. Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. I guess it classifies as an afternoon on all your different locations. It's absolutely afternoon here where I am, so good afternoon. My name is Emil Flam. I'm the business development manager in Indico Systems, and I work from Norway. So I'm located in the southern part of Norway, speaking, and I'm gonna do a webinar today for you on the evidence recording in the Barnahus / police organization. And Indico Systems, the company that I work for, has been involved with the recording of evidence in the policing sector from the year of 2001. And today is really a place for us to share our experience over these past almost 2 decades. Now, I really don't know all of your background, but I can't really hesitate when doing a presentation or a demonstration for an audience like this. So if my voice starts to tremble a bit, it's one of 2 or 3 reasons. So one of those might be that I'm a bit nervous, or I might enter a phase where I'm where I suffer from cognitive overload, and I really had one small incident there. So please be patient with me, and I guess we'll be fine during today. But it would be nice, and it's often nice to know what we're heading towards, and it's missing some letters, this agenda, but I guess you get the grasp of it, and it really begins with not my professional foundation, so to say, but really my company's professional foundation, and this webinar and the later on fact sheet, as already mentioned, professional foundation. Now, the professional foundation, which which my company is established on, is the movement of investigative interviewing, and for some of you, that movement is very well known. Now, for those of you who don't really know the movement of investigative interviewing, I really urge you to read up on the topic after this webinar. You will find it very familiar, coming from the Barnahus background, but it's really a movement within the jurisdictional sector that started in the 1980s, 1990s in the UK, based on wrongful convictions from police interviews over there. Now, that really that movement of investigative interviewing then were, so to say, exported to the Scandinavian countries, and I would be bold, but I think I'm not too wrong when I would end up saying that the investigative interviewing is really the equivalent in the adult world of what the Barnahus movement is for the children's world. But what they do share, or what the investigative interviewing model do really do well, is explaining parts of the investigative processes that you have to / need to undertake when doing forensic interviews and forensic investigation work. Now, what's very well said of the investigative interviewing network is the aim for an investigative interview, and that is to elicit accurate and reliable actionable information that you later on can do actions based on. Now, the investigative interviewing method is also proven as a very efficient method than alternative methods like the predecessors in READ, which is very popular in the US and often seen in Netflix TV series and such, and that is of course not a very efficient method, as it gives the police or the Barnahus a set of information which is not reliable. Now, try to move slides. Now we're going to do one of our first polls, and it's presented to you all here. going to give you some space to answer the poll. So very good. It's really, so far, it's really what I'm the advocate of being a good advocate of child interviews is what I've what my role, so to say, is in Indico. Part of my role is to do that. So it's good to find some common ground already. Now I'm going to move forward and do what needs to be done in a webinar like this. I'm gonna need to give you a company profile of Indico. I've spoken a bit about it already, but we are a supplier of digital interview recording solutions, and we've provided Barnahus and police with such solutions since 2001. Currently, we do have our own development centers, which is really a strength in this world with GDPR, with the US, China fights. So everything we do supply is from our own in-house development, and we are considered a turnkey provider of the IR solutions. But we are quite a lot more than that. We are also nowadays considered turnkey consultants on evidence gathering and management and control. And what that really means is that we have organizations coming to us to get help on how to create DIR standards, as we've done in Albania, for example. We've also been asked to assist larger projects like the ProCam project in the International Juvenile Observatory. Really can't remember what that abbreviation is, what the organization's name is now, but I guess you now see the graphs of it, and we are really involved in a lot more than just being a standard development center and a sales house. Now, that's also one of the reasons why we have this cooperation with Promise, and we've allocated time and resources to co-author the fact sheet on DIR, and that's what we're going to move on to in a bit. But first, I would really like to emphasize what we do and where we are, and these are the customers and partners of ours currently. Now, there's some customers that's not there on the picture. For some reason, I forgot to put them up. But the Icelandic police in Barnahus is also there on the end customer list. But you would also see the Norwegian, Swedish, and Danish children's safe houses slash Barnahuses, and the large police forces in the UK. And on the technical side of it, we have ongoing partnerships with the key players in the technological movements in the modern world, seeing Samsung, Apple, and Microsoft as them. And I hope now we will, or we would probably need to put Promise on the list as well now on the competence partners of Indico. Moving on, I'm very proud to say that we now do this launch of the fact sheet on video recording, the video recording of interviews in the Barnahus, and the fact sheet is really a result of me and Shauna's discussions on this topic, because we very soon on recognized that the Barnahus members, they really needed guidance on this quite vast topic, but again very niche. And we thought about having a fact sheet, or we even dreamt about having a fact sheet, and we did some work prior to the summer, and finalized it during and after, and today finally we're able to launch and present to you the fact sheet from Indico, and promise on best practices for video recording interviews. Before I move along, I would like to say that even though the fact sheet is a view of today's I would say market, in the lack of a better word, but it's a fact sheet. It's a best practice fact sheet based on what we've seen so far, and it might change over the following years, and we are very we have positioned ourselves so that we can change the fact sheet if we need to do so. So if there's a change in technology, or if there's a change in the legal background, then we are able to change this fact sheet. So we're going to do a new poll, and I hope you all respond on this one. So this one is really, what's the biggest challenges with interview recording currently? So this really is for the both of us to understand where we need to focus our resources and focus to even, or to assist, or to guide us and you in the future. Very good. I hope to touch into it. I hope you will find some pointers in today's webinar. So let's have a look. Now, we can't do a best practice on video recording without having a good view of why to video record, and there's a long list of good reasons to video record your interviews. And in the Barnahus movement, in the Barnahus centers and institutions, I would say from experience that the number one reason that you present to me when I visit on why you video record is to reduce the need of re-interviewing or bringing the child into court. That's why you do the video interview. But it's a method based on equipment that really gives you far more accuracy. It lifts the focus from being occupied by doing notes and similar actions to be more focused on the natural dialogue that you and the suspect or the witness or the victim has together in the interview. So it supports the natural dialogue, which is really key, especially when talking to children. Now it also is a very good equipment and method to give confidence to both the interviewer and the interviewee. And this is a good reason, or probably not a very good reasons when interviewing children, maybe, but when you interview adults, adult suspects would then know that whatever I end up saying in this interview is what is presented to court on a later date, or presented to other involved parties, and the story that I'm telling the police is what's really the police will need to retell at whatever stage later on. And for the police, it's a good tool to make you able to prove that the interview was not coercive. Being able to prove that is really one of the big reasons for the police, of course. But really, in the modern world, or at least in the Western world, being able to prove that it was not coercive is really a reason that goes away after some time. And the last thing I have here on the list is to allow for training. That's really currently that's one of the big reasons for why you should video record interviews, because based on what you have recorded of real cases, you're able to educate yourself if you're interested, just by yourself to become better. Then you could go back in time and review what you've done so far, or it could be a more systematic approach that your organization more or less do for you, and say that, well, based on your records, we would like you and your colleagues to go through it and to learn from it, and become better better interviewers in the future. And that is also something that the fact sheet puts emphasis on, because the training part is really where you could become very much better very quickly, and you have a lot to gain as an individual, as an interviewer, but also from sitting from the higher up in the organization that you're employed in. They could see that, well, if we do good training of our interviewers, then we could see better and quicker results from less resources. And this is, of course, they are of course able to do this when they do video recording of interviews. And again, the reasons is that very professional viewed, the first reasons that I gave you, but from a legal perspective, why you should video record interviews is really summarized in the last reason on my list on the left hand side of the slide, and that is you should this is the reason why you should treat the interview as a record of time and not a documentation of time. And if you really look into the legal definitions of what a record is and what a document is, you would soon find out that a record is a ledger of what has been said, and it can't be changed, while a document is a summary of what was said, and it can be changed if there was something that was written down wrong, or it's another good reason for why the document so far needed to change. And having a good view of what and having a good understanding of the differences between a record and a document is really key in the following of this webinar, but it also is very key to understanding the fact sheet itself, and at least using the fact sheet, knowing what the limitations are in the fact sheet. As it's only 2 sides, it really has a limitation in the number of words that we could fit into it, but knowing the difference between those two really gives you a good understanding of how to use the fact sheet. Now, when we had our discussions, me and Shauna, we needed to know how to attack this what do you call it? This topic of video recording interviews. Now, there's sorry about that. I had an employee of mine that was trying to get into this webinar. But anyways, now trying to understand the DIR and how to video record interviews. There's 2 considerations that you must do, and we as the authors of the fact sheet, we needed to do two considerations of DIR. The one first consideration is the legal consideration of how to handle this topic. Now, the legal part will give us a guidance on how to move forward and give a good technical consideration and give technical interpretation of the rules and regulations from the legal part. Now, if you if you simplify the process that we're all talking about, you could find, hopefully, you could find a simplification similar to what we've done. Now, we needed to simplify the world a bit because it's so complex. So we've simplified the world when it comes to the recording of interviews to something that we've called a recording process. Now, this simplification of the world is a chronological process that follows the figure on the right-hand side of my slide. And on the right-hand side, we have a recording process that starts with recording. Now, recording is a very understandable first start. Now, after the recording, it will then move on to the analysis of the recorded material. Then after you've analyzed the recording, you of course have presentation and archiving at the end. Now, from a legal perspective, there are some points that or key decisive factors that's really key to understanding each phase of this recording process. And to begin with, you have under recording, you have what we've called realistic representation. Now, when you do a recording, and if you're ever going to do a recording of that's going to become physical evidence in the end, it's really key that whatever you do record is represented as realistically as possible. Now, what I mean by that is that you have to organize so that the persons that you do record is represented in the video as realistic to the real event as possible. So it really backtracks to the interview itself as realistic as possible. to handle this in the legal sense, you have to make sure that the quality of what you record is as good as possible, and you have to account for the video itself being able to show the content and context that was discussed in the interview. So from your perspective, if you do an interview with a child, and the recording is only is started from the if you do 1 hour recording with the child and you record the last bit of the interview, then the last bit of interview is unable to show the content and context of what led up to that second half of the interview. Now then, if you just record that, you're unable to show a third party, a court or whatever, the most realistic representation of that child. And that might lead to the evidence that you did record. It might lead to that being dismissed in court. After the recording itself, it moves on to a phase of analysis. Now, what the content of that analysis, what the real world, the real content of that analysis is from case to case very different, and to give a complete list of all the different analysis methods and persons that are involved and so on and so forth is really not very realistic for us to go through. But in that analysis phase, you have to make sure that the persons that do the analysis of the video itself is making sure that the video recording is not distorted. And there's basically 2 different distortions that you can account for, and that is a technical distortion, and the technical distortion is when someone goes in and takes the video recording and edits the video recording, so it contains less or more than the original recording. So that's one example of a technical distortion. Now, another distortion fault pit is really the distortion that misinterpretation could lead to. So if there's persons that shouldn't analyze the recording or shouldn't have access to the recording, even they could do an analysis, and they might choose to share the information they gained from reviewing that recording to persons that shouldn't know that information either, and they might go on and do witness contamination or do other kinds of contamination to the case itself, and that would most definitely weaken the prosecution or the defense of this case. Going on from analysis, we have presenting as the next phase in the recording process. And when presenting video evidence, there is a need to validate that what you are presenting to the court is really the original, is really the video evidence is a when do the presentation of the video evidence, being able to validate that the video evidence itself is what was recorded back in the phase of the recording phase. So being able to validate it as original is quite essential for the judge accepting the evidence as valid. Now, just being able to do that is quite essential in this term, or in these terms. Then after the presentation of the evidence, you have archiving as, I guess, the last phase of the recording process. And for most of us, being able to preserve a historic record is probably not that interesting, but knowing that we have legal rights in the countries where we live through an appeal is quite essential for us. And that's why it's also a very essential part of the recording process as well. So in legal terms and in the legal considerations of the digital interview recording process, being able to preserve the historic records and provide legal rights through an appeal is very important. Now, based on all these phases and these legal considerations, we can then move on to the next part of the fact sheet and the implementation, the hopefully future implementation of your digital interview recording solutions. And that is the technical considerations based on the previous legal considerations that we did. Now, these considerations that we do, these technical considerations, they are for, or they could imply a fully or partially digitized solution, and it could also work on even analog methods for recording interviews. So it doesn't need to be a very futuristic solution that these reasons apply to, but they also apply to the older cassette players or recorders that, again, you might be familiar with from the Netflix episodes that you spend your time watching. But again, we go through that same recording process, starting with recording and ending in archiving. Now, along these phases, there's new key decisive factors that needs to be considered for every recording solution. And I'm often saying recording solution, but again, even though the recording solution is only, so to say, used in the recording phase, it's still something that backtracks to that in the future phases. So to begin on the top again, we have recording as phase number 1, and here we were from the legal considerations. We were here. We needed here to be able to do realistic representations of all parties in the interview room. Now, to be able to do that, when we do record our interviews, we should set up the room with cameras and microphones so that the cameras and microphones supply the recording solutions with good quality audio and video. Now, when we've been able to set them up so that they supply good quality, we need to be able to position the microphones and cameras so that we do like a whole room capture. And what do I mean by a whole room capture? I mean that when we are within the interview room, we have our cameras and microphones positioned so that all persons within the interview room is captured on video, on the same video. And the requirement for this whole room capture really comes from the UK back in the early 1990s, where they said that we need to do a whole room capture to be able to make sure that the policemen don't threaten the suspect with a gun under the table. So just by knowing that that source of the requirement really gives us a good sense of what the recording phase and the recording equipment should make sure for. Now, after the recording part, when we go on to the analyzing phase of this recording process, we had a key decisive factor in the legal consideration to be able not to distort the video. Now, not to be able to distort the video is really a question about access and control to the video evidence. Now, having a good access and control system to control all this could be essential, but it could also be secured by having a good access and control manual process supported by these old-fashioned evidence rooms. A good access and control system should allow for the right individuals access to the recording, and it should limit the access to the recording from or for persons that shouldn't have access to the evidence. Moving along to the presentation phase, and in the presentation phase, as mentioned, we need to be able to trace back to the interview room, and we need to have equipment and procedures that could show that trace back to the interview room. Of course, in the modern world, with modern digital interview recording equipment, we're able to do so by something called a digital fingerprint of the video from the interview room. And just to visualize you guys what a digital fingerprint is, you could think of the video that we did record in the interview room. Once we pressed stop in the interview room, the video record was sealed by a digital fingerprint. Now, when we go on to the presentation phase and we are planning to present this in court, the court would really appreciate us being able to show that this video was recorded on that time and that date, and straight or immediately after the recording was done, it received this digital fingerprint, this seal, and as you could see here, the video has the same seal, the same fingerprint, and that implies that it hasn't been edited. It's still the same recording. Now, that is something that we can secure by modern digital methods. It's explained in the fact sheet, but it could also be achieved by those older analog cassette recorders with having good chain of custody or chain of evidence. And chain of custody and evidence is for most that have a police background, that is a very self-explanatory word, but it really says that from the time that you did record an evidence, there should be a good ledger, a good tracking of all the phases that the evidence has been through along the investigation. Now, again, we have to make sure that the video recording that we've done, that we have presented to court, that has led to one or two suspects being sent to prison. We have to make sure that these recordings, they are preserved in the best way possible to make sure of legal rights through an appeal in the future, a potential legal rights or potential appeal in the future. Now, the archiving of the recording is really again a question that needs to be answered in a separate webinar, I guess, or a separate paper. But archiving properly is really a question that needs to be answered on the basis of what you have recorded on. And in this paper, in this fact sheet, we've emphasized a quite modern solution, a modern recording solution, and in that we've made sure that it's backed up digitally in a proper way. Now, all this really might look like a big solution, and it can be a big technical difficult solution to maintain and operate, but it doesn't need to be. But again, here is our complex solution to making sure that you video record properly and you archive and present properly. Now, this solution of ours is really a digital interview recording ecosystem. So it's an end-to-end ecosystem that starts in the interview room up here, and we could follow that all the way through the digital evidence room, and then all the way over to being analyzed by different parties that needs to have access to the recording. But we've taken this and we've supplied it to the customers that I did show you before we went on to the fact sheet, and it's been tested by its value has been tested, and the value of this solution is really a solution that enables the police force or the children's houses to efficiently video record and efficiently turn over the information gained in the interview room, turn over it into actionable information, and closing down the time from when you do an interview with a witness until you capture a suspect, and also it streamlines a police force also very, very well. But I'm not going to spend very much time on this. I would rather move on, and I know that this paper is going to be supplied you afterwards, so I'm just going to skip through. These are three slides on our products. So it gives you just some information on the products, but of course you could get more information from me directly. Now we have a new poll, and I don't know if my little helper in Croatia has fallen asleep, but here the new poll is, and we're able to do a demonstration after this webinar. We're also able to do a demonstration on another date, if that might fit you better. Like more like a one-to-one session, where we could open up for speech in between, a dialogue in between, but we're going to do a short demonstration after this session anyways, so glad you're able to join. Now, just having a view at the customers again, and the one big customer for you guys that we haven't or that we did forget to put up here is the Icelandic police and Icelandic Children's Safe House. And hello again, Shauna. But last bit of my presentation is a reading list for you. Now this reading list is gives you a bit more information on the investigative interviewing movement. And it gives you good sources to find more information than what the fact sheet might supply you with on the evidence recording. Yes, Shauna, I don't know if you want to stop me here.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop you because I have some questions. Nobody asked any questions in the chat, but you still have some time. If you have anything that you want to ask, please ask away. But an important takeaway for me personally from your presentation today was this difference between record versus document. That a record is closed and unchangeable, and then a document can be changed, and it's a summary that's not in its complete form. So I think that's something that we'll need to think about incorporating into our own into how Promise communicates about this ourselves, of course through the fact sheet, but in other texts as well. And I think I laughed to myself about the archiving, saying that it probably needs to be its own webinar. In fact, it was the discussion that took up the most of our time when we had that first Skype. Maybe because I'm too much of a nerd. I think to sort of round out the very end here, an important takeaway from our initial Skype call was making the investment once, instead of having to buy a new setup after you realize that that the initial setup that you had does not comply with the legal realities in your country. Maybe you want to say just a little bit more about I don't know, a specific
Yes,
anonymous case of that. Yeah.
That was also one of the reasons why I reached out to you, and it's also one of the reasons for the fact sheet. But we have experience from customers now, but we have experience from them that where they did a quite large investment of video recording equipment that wasn't fit to purpose. So what they ended up with was, hands down, it was a brilliant recording solution, but it only documented what happened in the interview room. So it really back traces to that difference between documentation and records, and they, after a while, when they had evidence that they tried to get the court to admit, but they never did, they came to us and they asked us to help them do good video recording, video evidence recording in the future. So that's what we have done for them, and that's hopefully what we will do for more that are connected to the the Promise network, but hopefully doing that once and not going through that first step that costs time and money.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're gonna wrap up the webinar bit here. Vesna's gonna come back and do her little wrap up. And if you're staying for the demo, don't go anywhere.
Yeah, thank you, Shona, and thank you, Emil, for very interesting presentation. For me, just two things. Take a look at your screen. It will be there 2 evaluation polls, like always. Please take a moment to give us feedback. It's really, like always, important for us. Thank you. And also, if you want to receive a certificate of attending this webinar, please write to this email that I will write to you in the chat box. So thank you for joining us today, of course. The next webinar, as I remember, is 31st of October, right, Shona? So we will see you there. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a nice rest of the day. Bye.
Bye-bye.
And welcome to everyone who's staying.
Yeah,
so
just give us
I think,
yeah.
Yeah.
Should I move along now with the demonstration?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna turn off my camera.
I will share a new screen for you.
I don't know if my camera is still working, but
yes.
There we are. I'm gonna turn off some applications, so we're not. Yeah. All right. Welcome back. As mentioned, I'm going to do the brief demonstration of our ecosystem. Now, we're just going back to this slide because it shows us or it shows you what I'm trying to communicate with this demonstration. Now, I would only be able to show you parts of this ecosystem, but hopefully you will be able to put your creative minds to use and to understand the rest. Now, the ecosystem that this slide is showing you is nowadays a one-stop shop as a user, and the one-stop shop as a user is accessed through a standard internet browser. Now, this standard internet browser is the same browser that you use to connect to the web pages that you wish to view and to read, or the same web browser that you use in your work life. Now, this web browser, this is Google Chrome, and the first page I'm presented when I direct myself into the correct address where I should connect basically to my interview recording ecosystem is this login page. So from here I just enter my details, login details. Now, this is something that's often integrated into your organization's credential system, so that you use the same credentials as you use when logging into your work mail or different kinds of solutions. Now, there's one thing I need to say before moving on, and that is that all these, or everything except from what is in this box, which is here, so it's called off-prem, but everything else here is often is a on-prem solution, on-premise. So it's a interview room, it's an evidence room, it's an evidence storage that is within one network, the same network. What that means is that it's an evidence room and it's an interview room that's held by the police force themselves. So it's nothing that Indica stores for the police or for the children's safe house. It's a solution that supplies functionality, but the information is held and controlled by the police and children's safe house themselves, and that is a very key differentiation between on and off-prem, and is very key to these organizations as well. Now, logging in, seeing my and now we've logged into my digital Indico digital evidence server, and we're viewed my evidence room and interview room at the same time. Now, this is a solution that we share internally, so please don't be bothered by my colleagues' pictures, thumbnail view pictures at the bottom of the screen. But when I log in, the first thing that I'm presented is the evidence repository. And the evidence repository is really a bucket of everything that I have access to. So all evidence items that I have access to, they are dropped in the evidence repository. Now I could, from this interface, I could choose to have a look at the list of evidence items from today, yesterday, this week, this month, and so on. Or I could, and of course locate them manually by selecting the different evidence items. Or I could move on and do a search of what I need. So now, using the search functionality, I could search for essential metadata that was attached to this recording that I'm searching after. Or I could choose to search for specific case numbers. If I did a video recording in the case of that is called something something, I could search for that specific case number, and the server would then present to me the evidence items that is linked under this case number. What the system here will never do is to supply me with cases or evidence items that is not something I have access to. So going back to that fact sheet, this system will not allow me to do an analysis of a video that I didn't have access to or shouldn't have access to. So this is, now we haven't moved on to the recording yet, but this is the evidence repository, and from here I could go on and do a manual analysis of the recording that I wish to do a review of. So to do that, I could choose to click play of the recording, and here is my colleague. He's doing, or he has done a demonstration earlier today. So when I do my analysis of this, I could play back the recording and view what comes up. I could choose to add bookmarks to this recording. I could choose to add bookmarks to this recording if I find something of interest, something I would like to go by in more detail afterwards. So I could do like different reviews of this video, but then set bookmarks along the way to help me do the second review of the video, or if I find something of interest that I would like to share with my colleagues afterwards, it's quite convenient for me to setting bookmarks. So that is something I can do, and I could set a bookmark, and I could also navigate between the different bookmarks that this recording session do have. So that is the playback, and it works how you would expect a recording session, how it would work. Now, all my actions on this server, they are logged in something called audit logs. Now, they are logged on different audit logs. If I'm or as I did my navigation through the server so far, I've navigated myself into different evidence items. But once I'm inside an evidence item and do actions on that evidence item, all my actions are logged. So they are logged in ledger that is in essence it's really the custody chain for this interview. Now I just had a view of the audit log for the recording the video file, but if I do that for the top for what's called a session, which is a session is what the interview is located into, I could see that within the session I have earlier today I have or we could see that my from my colleague's computer it was uploaded an interview, and the interview was later on opened, it was added, and it was played back, and then after a while we played it back again and we added a bookmark. So this is the complete chain of custody for this evidence item so far. So it just continues to add on new events if new events happen to this evidence item. Now,
Emil, one of the questions that we've gotten is about we've gotten a question about language of the whole thing.
The solution now is in English, but it has all the Nordic languages. It's in German, Finnish, and yeah, we in essence we could add on new languages if needed. So if there's a requirement for it being supported on Arabic, we could do that.
Spanish is the one of interest here. But
Spanish is also something we could add on. It's not. I don't think we. I think we have Spanish currently, but we need to do a good review of the Spanish version. But the languages is not a showstopper. So we could do some work to add languages, new languages, or revise and update languages that we currently have. And with regards to languages, it's quite difficult actually to support multiple languages in such a niche product, because there's so many professional expressions that's very different between the languages. But we are able to supply this system to quite a huge set of different customers because we get help from the customers themselves. So they come to us and say that, well, Indico, now I think we should update some languages because they make perfect sense in English, but in Finnish they should be a bit different. So we are able to work with both professional translators, and we do that in addition to get help on the professional wording of the solution from the customers themselves. I hope that answers the question, Sean. So you think I could move on?
Yeah, go ahead and move on.
Very good, very good. Now, I think we should go a bit back backwards in time, or in our recording process, and go back to the first step of the recording process, and that is doing the recording itself. Now, in this system, a recording is similar to an evidence item. It's nothing different from an evidence item. The recording or an evidence item on this solution could be a picture, it could be a document, but it could also be a video recording. And to add on a new video recording to this solution, we could click on, and that's what I did. I clicked on evidence item, and after I click on that, I could go forward and prepare for adding a new evidence item onto this server. In this case, we're going to add a new recording, but so far there's nothing different from the rest. And to begin with, I'm presented a report page that gives context to the evidence item that I wish to upload or wish to create. And in this sense, I have an option to choose the report page based on the evidence type. Now, if I'm going to do an interview, the preset report pages are different. They are in 3 different categories. They are even suspect, witness, or victim. And all these report pages, they are totally customizable. So they work in one part of the world, but it don't need to work in a different part of the world. But this is just for demonstration, so I'm going to just fill in some test information to this metadata report. So I'm gonna record you, Shauna. I hope that's okay. And yeah, you have a. I do actually know your last name, so I could fill in your last name as well. So I just fill in the metadata, and this is essentially what identify the recording after we're done with it. Next step in this process is to choose to create an online recording. But what I'm actually doing is that I'm going to access an evidence room that I have access to. So this evidence room is a room that I don't. It's actually placed in Tallinn, in Estonia. So now I'm just accessing that this interview room, and the interview room is, again, for demonstrational purposes, is just a mock-up interview room, but here we have a camera recording a tablet. So this is it's a bit static, but I guess you again put your creative minds to it, and you will find the real world purpose for this solution very quickly. Now from this first page, or from this recording page, I have before I do start the recording, I get visual confirmation that all right, there's something happening in the interview room. I could see both cameras. I could also get a visual confirmation of it being audio in that recording room. So from this page, I could go on and start the recording itself. Now, I'm presented a new option here to choose how I would like to record. Now, most of the time, I'm going to do a audio and video recording, and at this point, I would do an audio and video recording with a live stream. So I click on that, and the solution then starts to record the interview. Now the interview moves on, and along the interview itself, we could click on this button to make new bookmarks. So when we do the recording, we could choose to set new bookmarks if there's something interesting happening in the interview or whatever. We could choose to make a snapshot if we would like to have that as part of our evidence item afterwards. We could choose to pixelate the video so that the live stream that someone access is pixelated. I'm just going to turn that off, or we could swap how the video is recorded. Now this recording just runs in the background. So if I were to do the recording, I could just open the laptop sitting in the interview room, press start recording, close my laptop, put it away, and this system would record everything without me needing to intervene or to update the solution while I was fully focused on doing the interview itself. But for my so if I was sitting and we're gonna again use our creative minds, we're gonna think that we have I'm sat down in the interview room. I've started the interview from my laptop. I've put it away. The interview moves on, but I have a colleague and I have an expert on the matter that we're interviewing this person about. So these two individuals, they would probably like to access the interview room without going into the interview room simultaneously as the interview room is moving on. And if they had our solution, they could do that by going into this exactly same looking interface, just logging in with their username, and they could go in here and they could click playback live stream. Now they would then be presented a real-time live stream of the interview room, and this real-time live stream would make, or they would then become able to gain the information from the interview room much faster than if they were to play back an archived recording CD or DVD after the recording was finalized. and them as external actors in this theater that we've built ourselves. They could do the same operations. They could go in, set bookmarks. They could set them as private or public. So private meaning the bookmarks are private to themselves. If they are public, they are open to other players in the system. And that's basically it. So they could go in, do a live stream, that's it. And for me, who did the recording, I'm now closing into I'm soon to finalize the interview. I've said that, all right, we've now done a summary, blah, blah, blah. And then I could go in and stop the recording after I'm done. And when the recording is done and I've clicked stop, it disappears from the live stream list, and after a while it's added on as a new evidence item on the system once the recorder, once this room has uploaded the evidence from this location onto this location, the central evidence room. And so far we're just shown a line in the evidence repository pool that there is an evidence of an interview with Emil and Jonah, and it's on the way, but it hasn't appeared yet on the server because it hasn't been moved over. And again, from here we're able to see the live stream. No, sorry, the chain of custody for this evidence item so far. Before I've done any edits, any actions, events to the evidence item on the server. So again, this is the complete ledger of the evidence item, and it's part of what you were able or would like to show the court, and or not, yeah. So you would like to be able to show it, of course. Now, when having this recording on the server, I could choose to, let's say I had this one recording. It's of it's a recording of a child, and I would like to, or I'm asked by some lawyer that has legal rights to the recording. And he has legal rights to play it back. So he hasn't legal rights to get a copy of the recording, but he has legal rights to get to view it. Now, in the old days, you would send this lawyer into the police station. He would be needing to sitting in the police station or the children's safe house, view the recording, and then go happily back home. Now this is not that modern, and it's or we're able to do it a bit more efficient these days. So what I can do from this system is that I could first go in and I could edit the recording, so I could make it a bit shorter. Let's say I would just like to show this lawyer part of the recording, because he don't have legal rights for everything. He just have legal rights for parts of it. And then I could go in and I could distort the audio, and I could pixelate the video. And I don't know the reasons, and I don't know how I could connect that to my example now, but I guess you could quickly find good reasons for why you should pixelate the video you're going to send to this lawyer. Now, when I did this editing of the recording, I set the time and I set that it should be pixelated and distorted. And once I click order, this system sends a special robot. Yes, it's a cute little guy sitting in the basement. He receives that order, and what he does is that he takes a copy of the original recording and he do the edits to the copy so that he never changes the original recording itself. And after he's done the editing, he then sends it back to the source. And this is really the source. It's the session where the interview is located, and this little gnome or robot, he is then send us back this shorter version of the full recording. And it was this part that I would like to share with the lawyer that is located outside my network. He's placed in another building. He doesn't work for the same employer, so he don't have that internal access. So what I can do from here is that I could do a publishing, and publishing sounds very scary, but publishing is really just the wording of it. And I'm now moving on to doing a publishing to my email address, and I just use another email address of mine. So I'm going to do publishing to this person. Yeah, and this is me, of course, but so just think that I'm not Emil, but again, and I'm going to do publishing to me and or to him, and I said that the lawyer, this is the lawyer, he's not going to be able to download anything, and he just have access to playing the recording back. So by choosing this 0 downloads, this person will not be able to download anything. And I could also choose now to set the date for when this recording should expire. So I say that, all right, Emil, you have the rights now to view this edited version of the recording for the next 5 days, and you don't have rights to download it. And after that, it's moved away. And this works in a similar fashion. So when I click publish, this solution says to that small gnome that, well, could you go on, do a copy of this edited recording and then send it to the external portal for Emil at Indicosys to access it. And this is now a process that's on the way, so it's moving along, and we're awaiting for the confirmation that it's published, and I don't know if we have time for it because it do take some time. But again, I think with your creative minds, I guess you're familiar with how it would end up working. But I'm gonna have my mail in the background to check if we're able to test it out. Now, so we've done all this, and I guess the last bits and pieces would be to show you that from this interface, you could go in and you could order a transcription task. So in most police forces in most countries, there are the legal footing of the digital interview recording says that it should be transcribed. The recording should be transcribed. Now it really doesn't matter when you when it comes to this treating the recording as a record or a document, but it's more a requirement that comes from I guess it's practical reasons for it. So what I can do is that I can take my recording, and I could order that transcription task. And in some cases, and in some police forces, there's a transcription team that's like an internal resource, and they are sat ready to do transcription of new recordings whenever they are asked to. So me as an investigator, I could go in here and I could say that please, transcription team, please transcribe recording number 1 under this interview session. And then that case, transcription task, that is sent to the transcription team that has their own little interface under tasks, and they could then do the transcription from this part. Now we also have and we do currently work with automated transcription services to be able to supply our customers with automated solutions for transcribing interviews, but that is a bit futuristic for some languages currently. Norwegian is one of them, and that is all due to the language Norwegian being a bit small. It's not that populated, so it doesn't have that big or the big players of the speech to text engines. They are not too interested in doing custom work just for Norwegian, but Spanish, and English, German, they are really becoming good enough to be used by law enforcement. So I have now, and I mentioned the external part of the server, and we published now this small part of the evidence to me, or to my email address, but we just played around by saying that me was something else. Now I'm that lawyer who's sitting outside your network, and I have been distributed now 2 emails from that evidence room, and the first email address gives me an access, not a code but a URL to where I might access the evidence that is distributed to me. So I could click on that, and when doing so, I'm sent to this external portal, and to log in I need my credentials. So it's my email address. That was not what I was planning to paste. Try again. Email address, and it has this password. So I enter my credentials, click login, and from here I have now the option to play back what was sent to me. So here I could see that, all right, I'm the lawyer. I could do a review myself of the interview, and that's that. As we defined, I can't play anything, or I can download anything. I can only play it back, and this recording has also been watermarked. It's physical stamped by a unique watermark, so we can locate it later on if needed. Yes, closed everything down now. But I guess we're coming to the end of this demonstration. What I haven't been able to show you is the physical products, but that's not very interesting to show you. But I guess some of you might have questions about how would it be if you include physical objects like cameras and computers and microphones, how would it look like? And I could I could, and I'm very happy to assist you on that on a separate call or in a separate demonstration. But what we've left out so far is really the new entry to the evidence recording world, which is recording using mobile phones. So that is what I haven't been able to show you. But other than that, I've more or less showed you the capabilities of what to expect of a modern DIR solution. And I don't know if you have questions. I see something blinking here. Shauna is writing something. Shauna, should I end the session? Are you still there? Hello? I think I'm gonna stop the sharing if there's no question. I could always go back. Yes. I don't know. Everyone left me? No? Spanish. Yes. Please contact me, Maria, and that's something we can discuss. Now, Spanish, is that are you familiar with the Red Cross? Are you connected to the Red Cross in Spain? All right. Because I had there was someone that tried to contact or had some questions that were routed to me from Spain, but they were routed through the Swedish government, and it was filtered a bit too many times to yeah. But hello, Andrew. System requirements, they are running on Windows, all from 2012 to 19, I think. Yeah, and you need a couple of servers. It really depends on the number of recorders you would like to have and simultaneous users. Yeah. But please contact me on my email, and I'll assist you a bit, because it's really like a discussion. Where should we end up with this? So requirements are, yeah, I guess you understand it. Thank you, Karine. Thank you. Now it's more or less up to you guys. If you have more questions, I'm happy to answer. If not, there's this email address of mine. I also have a phone. So this is my phone number. It's in Norwegian, but I'm of course happy to speak English. I guess also it could be of interest to some of you what we often do if we're gonna go into a new market. We find, or we organize everything, and then we go in and try to find a local partner that we can work with, and having that partner very, very close to you. So that could be something to should just be familiar with. I guess that's everything. Thank you for watching, and yeah, thank you, and hopefully speak to some of you later. Bye bye.